So, Susie, I have a vested interest in this topic. And I mean, obviously, I have been in a relationship, I've been in a marriage, but I am now also single. And so, when it comes to communication and relationships, I am very, very interested in why connection is more than just words. And I know there are lots of relationship experts out there. What I'd love to get your view on is what most focus on and maybe why what they focus on doesn't necessarily work all the time.
Sure. If I start with singles, because obviously singles and couples need two different things. In the land of singledom, a lot of dating coaches might focus on your profile, but they're focusing more on your picture rather than how you're coming across. And when they put the blurb together for you or educate you in how to put your blurb together, they're not really talking about your word soup, your word recipe, because the words that you use and the way in which you're using them then transcends energy across the screen to the person that's reading it. It's like when you read a book and a book really speaks to you and it starts to invoke certain emotions, and that's what you want from a dating profile. I don't know any dating coaches that are talking about that. They might say not to swear or use slang words, etc., but they're not really thinking about what energy are you putting into it and what energy are you wanting to have come across, and as a result the energy that comes across attracts the kind of person that will approach you. So we often have people saying, gosh, always seem to attract like the players or what have you. Well, what are you saying in your profile? What pictures are you using? What obvious and subliminal messages is it putting across? So that's something that I don't think is probably being talked about. Touched on, not properly talked about in depth.
I think it's very true because I think, I know personally, having been on the apps, a lot of people are lacking in energy on dating apps because they're feeling quite jaded about the whole experience. And I think that has then bred this nonchalant type of perspective. So the energy is off anyway. People aren't necessarily putting in the right energy to get the energy back.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there are lots of people who are tired of it. They've given up. A lot of people are just swiping for the sake of it. They're using it as an ego boost. And I really think to start with, you need to come in with the right energy. So why am I even on the dating websites? Why am I here? Am I here for an ego boost? Fine. So be honest. Just be honest.
Or a dopamine kick.
Yeah, but I would just be like, this is what I'm here for. You know, I've just come out of a relationship. I'm testing the waters. I'm not sure what I'm into anymore. That's what I'm here for. Be honest. And I think that's what's annoying a lot of people, that you say you want one thing, but then when you connect, you give something else. And then a constant experience of this is what makes people want to give up or not put their best foot forward or not give you the best of themselves because they think, oh, you're probably just another player or a messer. And that's really important because it all starts with our emotions and our thoughts. So our thoughts create our emotions, and our emotions give way to our thoughts, and it's all interacted. So I think you kind of need to have a word with yourself first and go, what am I doing here? And come with that energy and be completely honest about it in everything that you're putting across. So if you do want maybe just to have a one night stand, then put your raunchy pictures out. But if you're looking for, true love and marriage, it's not the best way to start. Sorry, go on.
No, that's cool. So it's actually really interesting. Last night I heard about the burnt haystack method for dating. Have you heard about
No, I
this?
haven't.
It's this lady, she is an expert in rhetoric, and she looks at the patterns of language in responses on dating apps. And she advises this approach to going on dating apps, which is very, very specific. And it's kind of like energy management. So I guess that's also really important. It's sort of managing your own energy as well as projecting your own energy and being very conscious of how that is affecting what you say and how you come
respond.
across and how you respond. Energy is actually way more important. It's the most important thing, because if you are being focused and channeled, so she was talking about being very, very specific about managing your energy around how you go on the apps, how often you're on the apps, if people aren't responding to you, what you do, and all of those sorts of things. So you can manage your energy and keep it high and keep it maintained, because it can be quite draining.
So I'd say that's more to do with how you think about it. But I would say, what are you doing for your own energy? So it's you look at the cup, is your cup half full or half empty? And if it's only half full, what are you doing to keep it topped up? So there are people in this world, and I'm sure we've all come across them, who look like they're operating on cloud nine all the time. And you think, my gosh, what are they taking? What are they doing? Oh, a good example is someone who's in a relationship, a loved up relationship, and it's like they're completely untouchable. And I think we all want to live in that space, and you
Yeah.
actually can. And actually, this is another point I was going to make. I think a lot of people go on the dating websites to outsource their energy. So if I go on the dating website and I get loads of attention, it will make me feel good. And when you don't get that, you feel bad. Or if the other person is not in a good place and they're now not topping you up in the way that you want, you blame them, you resent them, you stop giving them attention back, and then they stop giving you attention, and then it all starts to fall apart. So the most important thing for yourself is, it's like when you're hungry, you eat. So when your energy is low, what are you going to put into your life and into yourself to top up your energy? So if you can always think, what do I need and what works for me to bring up my energy? You will always go at everything with a good energy, and you will then attract things and people and opportunities that are on the same energy level as you. And
I
that's
love
what
that.
people are not focusing on.
Yeah. And what about in relationships then? Because that's different.
Yeah. So having been a dating coach and matchmaker in the past, I have worked with people who have been married and the marriage has fallen apart. And one of the most obvious things for me that I've seen is the love languages. So have you come across Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages?
Have in lots of detail, yes, and have lots of examples of where it's actually gone wrong with discussions with potential people on apps.
Right. So one of the biggest problems we have is, and this is actually something that I learned during lockdown due to a relationship that I was in, and it just came to me in a moment of inspiration, which is when we know ourselves, we can know others. And when we know ourselves, others can know us. So we're doing ourselves injustice by not knowing ourselves and expecting other people to, I don't know, telepathically understand us or something.
100%.
And so I think when you meet people, it's really important to say, I don't know if you're into human design or you're into astrology or all the things, whatever it is, just say this is me and this is what I need. And then you help that person to be the best version for you. In a
Yes.
relationship, what I found that when these relationships have fallen apart,
Yes.
it's a lot of it's to do with the love languages and people feeling love starved and saying, I didn't get my needs met, but did you vocalize it? Did you understand what your needs were in order to help the person to see if they could even meet your needs rather than
Yes.
saying they're not meeting your needs? And there are also, with neurodiversity now as well, that's a whole other topic. But some people are sensitive to certain phrases or tones or body languages. And I think, again, we need to understand ourselves in that respect. And there are ways in which people have upset each other by perhaps speaking in a tone that is upsetting and maybe not realizing how they're coming across, which again comes back to energy. So if you see someone as a frustration, no matter what you're saying to them, it will come across with a frustrated undertone.
Yeah. In terms of the love languages and the use for that in relationships, I think it is a really good self-reflection exercise, and it's a good thing to put a label on to be able to then communicate with someone else. Because if we can understand ourselves and say, oh, this is a preference I have, this is how I love my needs being met, or I speak in terms of non-verbal, in terms of language around love, that's amazing. What I've seen is, and this has been an example, I was having a conversation with a gentleman, really great conversation, really all the green flags, and definitely wanted to meet and all of those sorts of things. And then he asked me to rank my love languages. And because I didn't obviously put the right ones that matched with him, he unmatched me.
I think that's someone who doesn't understand it.
Yes, but you see, so it can be sort of weaponized a little bit in terms of, well, if your love language doesn't match mine, then we're not compatible. But it's not about that.
It's actually not about compatibility in that respect. It's about, if one person's love language is gift giving and the other one is acts of service, it's just about saying that it all matters, because they all matter.
Yes.
But for some reason, when we get the one that ranks the highest for us, it does something to us internally, and it just says, I love you, without having to say, I love you. or I value you, I appreciate you, respect you, whatever you attach to it, it just energetically lifts you and it creates a deeper connection.
I've always wondered as well, when we talk about love languages, are we talking about what we need or what we do? Or are we talking about both? Because acts of service for me, so acts of service and quality time, are things that I really appreciate receiving. But what I deliver, or what my preferences are in terms of giving might be slightly different.
So I believe, and from my experience of this, that we treat others the way we want to be treated ourselves, and this is where it goes wrong. So if those are your two preferences, you will naturally offer that out.
Well, yes.
Because it's what you rank as important. This is why we have to understand the other person's love language, because in your mind, you're going, well, I'm doing acts of service and I'm giving quality time. I'm showing you that I love you, and they're questioning me.
Yeah.
Yes, because maybe theirs is words of affirmation, and they're not hearing what they need to hear. So this is where the clash comes in again, and people go, what do you mean I'm not showing you that I love you? And it gets escalated really quickly. And it's because one's speaking Chinese and the other one's speaking English, and you just kind of need to find that middle ground. So it's about going, I need this. This is what makes me feel good. What do you need to make you feel good? But obviously not in such a cold and clinical way. But that's what you're trying to get to understand.
Yeah, it's creating a safe space for communication, which we can kind of label and generalize a little bit so that we can understand where our needs lie. And I think in that use, it's amazing. I think in the single world, it is being misused a little bit. I've seen a pattern of men on dating apps putting their love languages, and physical touch is their top love language. And then again, that sort of meaning around that has been sort of shaped into essentially a sexual nature. So maybe in past relationships, the sex wasn't there. And so it's really important that sex is part of course, that's really important, but sort of leading with that as a message on the apps, for me, and I know quite a lot of them, can be off-putting, because you're then seeing physical touch as sort of saying, well, I just want sex.
Or I need to have an extremely high sex drive, and maybe I don't have one right now, and therefore you're already precluding yourself from being a match because you might rank yourself as not having a high sex drive, and then it's like, well, there's no point speaking to this person. So this is again why it's important to be mindful about what you're putting out and why you're putting it out there. While you were talking, I was thinking about somebody that I know who's more of a sex coach, actually, and she helps you understand your physical desires and what works for you and what doesn't, and actually if there's any ick around anything, and maybe you've got some fantasies that you'd like to have see feature in your relationships but don't know how to do that. So she has those conversations with you, and again, this is all part of understanding ourselves and knowing those parts of ourselves. We can better communicate it, because by saying physical touch, we're leading people to fill in the blanks, basically, and they can fill it in all the wrong ways. And then they will just pass you over.
So I think, therefore, maybe the dating apps are a bit, well, when they say my love language is as a prompt, I guess it's a bit tricky, because there's so much more to it than just saying this is my love language. It depends in what relationship, what the dynamic is, and all those sorts of things as well. That's really, really interesting to explore that. There's one thing that you say that's like your motto, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And when we think about that in the context of relationships, what does that mean?
So as an example, if you're somebody who's very time poor in your life, you're not going to know how to manage your time in a relationship, because this is how you show up over here. So it's probably going to be how you show up over there. An interesting example of this was, a different but interesting example of this is, for example, I joined a course online, and there was some joining details, and the person who was offering out the course ended up being bombarded with emails from people saying, I pressed click on Facebook to join the group and I'm not in the group. What's happening? Their excitement for this immediacy overtook reading the detail in the instructions, because the instructions basically said, press join, and on said day at said time, we will start bringing people in. So what ended up happening was she had extra admin to do, because she now needed to settle these people's nervous systems, who basically had rushed the process and not read the detail. So, and she actually said as well, where else are you doing this in your life? Maybe use this as an opportunity to see where this immediacy to have something, do something, etc., is superseding the importance of reading the instructions. So there's another example of it as well. So what are we doing in our life that isn't working for us necessarily, but because it's like an ingrained habit, it then shows itself in every area of our lives. And in this context, we're talking about relationships. So detail, for example, is really important, especially if you're a detailed orientated person. But let's say you're going on a date and the time is 7:30, but you haven't paid attention to the detail, and I don't know, you've turned up quite nonchalant at like 7:45, and then again it's already getting it off onto the wrong foot because that person was quite detailed about the 7:30. I don't know, for whatever reason you haven't organised yourself, maybe due to time management, haven't paid attention to the date starts at 7:30 because maybe you're seeing a show, whatever it might be. But we're already creating problems before we've started by not paying attention and acting in one area of our lives and then bringing that through into our relationships.
It's so true, and it's this is very relevant to me because I know the saying that you have to be the best version of yourself in order to attract your energetic, ideal partner. And I've had various things happen over the last few years, very challenging. I'm a single parent, and there's been like health problems and family problems and losing loved ones and all those sorts of things. And in that time, I developed sort of unhealthy coping mechanisms and maybe wasn't the best version of myself. And so therefore was, kind of like butting up against problems and issues and challenges. But since I really took ownership of that and looked at the source of that, the source of maybe the challenges and the problems and, all those sorts of things, one which was stopping drinking, like completely, because it was a common denominator for a lot of, just things that didn't need to be problems. Already things have energetically started shifting. And so you're right in that it all starts with us, right? It all starts with us and how we operate as a leader in a business, as a parent, as a friend, as a family member, as a partner. How we do one of those things is how we do all of those things.
Yeah, and we bring bad habits home with us as well from work. So a very personal example for me that was talked about a lot in my house. So my dad used to be a solicitor, and we sometimes felt like he treated us like a client because he had that operational way of being, and we spend so much time at work that we don't realise that we bring that way home with us sometimes. And that causes problems in itself. So there are people who are in very high-end jobs who need to be a certain way, but you can't be that way in your personal life because actually that's transactional. And that is not what forges really deep, meaningful, sensitive and authentic relationships. It actually creates barriers. So you could be trying your hardest with those ways of being because it works at work, and then you get frustrated because it's not happening in your home life in the way that you want it to. But it's because this isn't business. This is matters of the heart. These are people's feelings, and we need to have a really high sensory acuity to see what's like going on in front of us, and how someone's communicating with us, whether that's verbally, non-verbally. There's so much that goes into it, but when you're really switched on, this is when true connection really happens, and the vulnerability that everybody wants to experience really comes to life.
As you're talking there, I'm thinking about energy blockers, and I know that I am not alone in saying that we have walls and defenses to protect ourselves, particularly when it comes to love. And if we have been hurt or we have had past experiences, we can do the work and we can be open to receiving love in and all of that sort of stuff. But we still have got walls around our heart to protect ourselves. So very measured maybe in our approach, rather than, gosh, younger me would just dive straight into relationships and just, here I am, this is all of me, very vulnerable. I'm definitely not that person anymore. What are your thoughts on that in terms of energy and what we can do about that?
Okay, big question. And that'd probably be a whole conversation in and of itself. What I would say is what works for one doesn't work for another, but take inspiration. And there are always offshoots of modalities that you can use to help yourself. So I'd like to start by saying that in the first place, because there are lots of people that say, I did this or I can help you with that. But we need to remember that everybody's journey is different. So there might be a possibility that you try something that doesn't quite work for you, but don't give up. When you were talking, one of the things that came to me was something that I did, which was fascia massage. I don't know if you've ever come across this.
No.
Remember, well, back at school when we did our biology, you might remember that there were pictures that we saw of humans, but without the skin. So what was underneath, like the muscles and the tendons,
Yes.
the ligaments, the bones. But there was a white cobweb that sat above the muscle.
Yes.
Yes, that's your fascia.
Okay.
So here's an interesting fact for you. Going to jump a bit all over the place, so hopefully you can follow me here. You know, they say never go to bed on an argument.
Yes.
Have you done that and waken up the next day feeling a bit stiff and tight and a bit uncomfortable in your body?
Certainly not feeling good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your fascia responding to your emotions. And your emotions get trapped in your fascia. You need your fascia to feed your body because it's how all the nutrients move around the body. So if it's blocked up with emotional knots, not only are you not going to move properly, but from a health perspective, it's going to have a huge impact on you. And I had some fascia massage done 2019, I think it was, by somebody who was extremely spiritual. And one of my friends said that the way she touches you is like a blind man reading Braille. She was unbelievable.
My gosh.
Yeah, she's unreal. And she put her hand over my heart area and she said to me, Suzie, your heart is so closed. So this is real. This isn't just mentally I'm closing down. You can be physically closed down, and that's from heartache, because I have had heartache in my life. And that's partly why the dating relationship thing came about and why I have a deeper understanding maybe than some people, having lived through certain things. So physically, it can be very real. Then there's the mental blocks and the stories that we tell ourselves. And the mind is so powerful. It is the most powerful computer out there. So if you're replaying constant narratives of nobody's going to love me or I need to protect myself, you're going to show up in that way. So again, your communication, your interactions, your response mechanisms, it all plays into this mad web of communication.
Yeah.
So yes, you can do some mindset work, and the mindset can relax the body, but the body can also relax the mind. I also did an exercise a while ago in a workshop where you say, dear God, dear universe, and you just let it all out and you say, this is what I experienced. And then you almost sit back and you let an answer come back to you. And I did that over a relationship, and it was interesting what the current me made sense of, because the me at the time during the heartbreak was, of course, I was the victim. We all are when that's happening. But when I heard it come through me, it was actually, but if not for that relationship, you wouldn't know this, you wouldn't have done that. So it's about changing the narrative into gratitude.
Yeah. It's funny, I feel like that's all good in terms of sort of past hurt. But I think for me, as we're talking, this feels a bit like a therapy session. What's coming up for me is my mindset around time. Because I don't have much spare time. And so therefore the spare time I do get is so precious. There's almost a bit of a mindset around I don't necessarily have the time. And so therefore, if we think about this in terms of how you do anything is how you do everything, I am good at managing my time, but I just don't have much of it free to be open for love, for
I had a client like you once. We did the Johari's window
yeah.
exercise, and we found that she had a lot more time than she realised.
Well, I mean, I get 48 hours every other week without my children. And in that time, I see my mum, I see my friends. It doesn't really give much time. So I guess that is just as a physical, logistical blocker that's turned into a mental one.
So without turning it into a full-on therapy session and deep diving and picking everything apart, because you might not want your listeners to hear everything. it would be interesting to see how you spend your time generally, what things are important, why they're so important, what can be outsourced, what's not so urgent. And then when we start really putting everything out there in front of us, we can see that actually it's our mindset that's making us busy. And I'm not saying this is you, but there are instances where people have PTSD and CPTSD and other things like that, where they actually make themselves busy as a distraction coping mechanism. So there are lots of things mentally, perhaps, as to why lots of us make ourselves busy. I'm also a very busy person, but I make time when I want to make time.
Yes, that's the thing, isn't
So
it?
that's
Yeah,
the other
really
part of it as
interesting.
well.
Well, we'll stick a pin in that. Maybe I'll speak to you about that afterwards. But when we think about this then, and we think about from an energetic perspective, if we want to find love, if we want to improve our existing relationships, if we want to feel more happy and fulfilled, what do we need to do from an energetic perspective?
So I'm going to share with you something to start with. It's called the Map of Consciousness, and it derives from the book called Power vs. Force. And just in short, just to give it an overview, and I could definitely not do it justice in the confines of this conversation. Generally speaking, you want to be at an energy level that is 200 and above. 200 is generally where love sits, although love sits at 500, but the positive emotions start to come through at 200. So below 200, you've got pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. So going downwards. But as your energy goes above 200, we have courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. They do say that when you get to enlightenment, that's when it's the game over, but I can't comment on that. But coming back to the analogy of, your glass being full or empty and putting things in that make it feel good, one of the exercises that I suggest to people when I'm working with them is 50 things that make you happy. So really sitting down and going, what makes me happy? And it could be having a block of cheese every day if that's really your thing, or, smelling flowers, or going for a walk. For everyone, it's really different. But what you want to do, and obviously I'm giving away one of my big exercises here, but really sit with yourself and go, what are the small things, what are the big things that make me happy? And it doesn't have to just be 50, but you want at least 50. And you want to think, how can I weave those throughout my day, my week, my month, and my year? So there are constantly things that are lifting you up. So we're not outsourcing our happiness
Yes,
to other
that's the
people.
key. Yeah, that is the key.
Yeah, we want to think about the relationships that are around us. We are the common denominator of the 5 people that we're around. How's that rubbing off on us? We really need to think about our people and physical, mental, and emotional environments, because these all impact our energy and take us on an energetic roller coaster as well, which is also quite important to mention, because nobody likes to be around a roller coaster because they don't know what they're going to get. It's like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. Chocolates maybe is fine, but with a person, not so much, because you don't know if they're going to be happy, sad, volatile, needy. It's basically up to us to manage our energy. So we need to think about those things, because another thing that comes to mind is the story about what's in your cup. Have you heard about that one? So if it's coffee that's in your cup and somebody bumps you, coffee's going to spill everywhere. But if there's anger in your cup and somebody bumps you, you're going to spill anger everywhere. And then whoever you spill it onto, they need to then absolve themselves of that, and they need to find a way to get rid of the anger that you've spilt all over them.
Yeah.
And it has this domino effect, and it's not fair. And then that impacts our brand and how people see us, because like, oh, they really want to, I don't know, hang out with Jane, come away feeling angry every single time because I'm getting like anger spilt all over me. So this is really, really important. It's also relevant to do with the dating, because if you want introductions, you want people to think of you in this good energy space. So that's where it can also impact the introduction side of things. So really, yes, really think about what are all the things that make me happy and how can I have those in my life. And it takes 90 seconds to change your energy states. I don't know if you know this. So if you're...
I can definitely believe that.
Yeah, so from a biological perspective, if something has got you hopping mad, and for whatever reason, you immediately need to be in a good energy because I don't know, maybe you're picking up the kids and you don't want to be red in the face and you just want to be good for them. Generally, listening to music is something that can change our energy state very, very quickly. Lots of people turn to food, but that's a relationship that you need to deal with in terms of your energy and food. But music is something that has no calories and can definitely change your mood very quickly.
As a DJ, and with decks here at home, that's literally my go-to. It just immediately shifts.
But it mustn't be the patch-up job. Maybe it's like the paracetamol for when you've got some pain, and that's fine, but you can't take paracetamol every hour, every day. We need to work on the root causes as well. Movement is really, really important. And, no matter how bad you're feeling, yes, it takes effort to get up and move, but movement creates energy. It takes energy to move, but you create more energy by moving. And when we move the emotions around. And then that also plays into the whole fascia thing as well.
Of course.
So then you're moving the energies around you, through you, and out of you by moving. But when we get in a tiz, and we end up being a bit of a couch potato, that's when these energetic knots start to appear, and then you're like, oh, I can't move off the sofa, I'm aching, because all your emotions have just stagnated and just intensified, really.
And that's usually when people go on dating apps.
Because they're outsourcing their feelings.
Exactly.
I feel really bad, I'm aching, can't bother to move, right, I'm going to go on a dating app, I'm going to see who's going to fill up my cup. And it's actually, I'm not feeling really great right now. What can I do to fill up my cup? And for me, I've got a dog. I love him to pieces. He's an absolute lunatic. Walking on the lead can be difficult sometimes, but when we're out in the field, he's hilarious. So if I just need some comedy factor and I want to move, right, that's it. Me and Harney going out for a walk, going to the fields, and I'll be moving myself, and I know I'll get some comedy factor from him.
Yeah. Yeah, this is also relevant for me at the moment because, when I was drinking, wasn't drinking heavily, but I was noticing a pattern of relying on alcohol to outsource, to try and give something, whether it be to numb or escape, maybe at the end of the week or whatever. And then ultimately that didn't do me any good because I didn't feel very good. So I've replaced that with body combat.
Brilliant.
Really enjoying that. And I went yesterday morning, I was really tired. It was first thing in the morning after the school run, and I didn't want to go, but I felt on top of the world afterwards. And that's been just such a good replacement. Music, going up on the South Downs, even just a little bit of a escape into television every now and again, a little bit, not too much, like a program that you might like. Just
you have to be careful though with TV, because from a mental health perspective as well, if we're not in a good mood and we watch something that then affirms our thoughts and feelings, it compounds it even more and it takes us further down.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more like, an interesting documentary that I want to watch or something like that wouldn't necessarily trigger.
Then it creates inspiration rather than affirms your feelings.
Yes.
But this is what some people do. They don't realise they lose themselves in TV thinking I will escape my feelings, but we don't realise that we're compounding the negative feelings we've already got.
True.
It is crazy, but we do need to look at the stimuli around us and how we're perhaps having to work harder to fight against the stimuli that we're actually exposing ourselves to.
Yes.
So therefore, we're draining ourselves in ways that we don't need to.
Well, it's everywhere. Social media being another example there of how you can zap your energy from scrolling, and then kind of going back to it because it's so addictive because you want to check the notifications or you want to check things, but actually that's just draining your energy.
And you might see something that triggers you. So someone's just got engaged.
Yes.
And you're feeling like I've just broken up, or I'd really like to meet someone. It's like, and you can end up seeing red rather than sunshine and rainbows and be happy for them.
But what you said about that sort of barometer for the measures, what is 200, 500? What is the measure there?
As in, how is it measured?
Yes.
You'd have to go to Power Festivals.
I just wondered what 200 or 500 means. I just, in the context of those different emotions.
Sorry, let me just go back to it for you. So 200 here, and this one in particular says courage. So the positive emotions are above 200 and all the negative ones sit below 200. So at the very minimum. You want to make sure that your levels are 200. I'm not sure if there's a particular way to measure it. I think the Heart Math Institute have something.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is where I'm letting the side down, where I have the book called Power vs. Force, and it's such a big one that I need to make the time to sit down and give my full focus to it.
I think, regardless of the numbers, it makes sense that we can look at our emotions in that way. And I use this thing called Net Promoter Score with the corporate work I do, in terms of whether you have a detractor or a promoter when you get feedback on anything that you've delivered, and you ask people to score it out of 10. And if it gets a certain score, they're a detractor. If it gets I think it's 9 or 10. If people score you 9 or 10, they're promoters. And actually, we can look at our emotions as, anything below a certain point is a detractor from our well-being and our energy sources. So sitting in those feelings.
I think the way I think about it, because I'm quite a visual learner as well, is it's like an anchor. So when we're in the low energy, it's like we're walking along with this anchor tied to our ankles, and we're having to work extra hard, especially if you're tired and burnt out. This is for you. You're having to work extra hard to get things done because you've got this anchor called fear, anger, frustration, whatever, hovering around your ankles that you're dragging around with you. So it's about going, how can I move my thinking so it changes my emotions? And then when I'm on an emotional high, all of a sudden that anchor's just kind of like release itself.
Yeah.
Also, what comes to mind to share with you, something interesting that somebody I worked with helped me with. So she once said to me, Susie, how do you feel? And I said, I think I feel, right, stop. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, it's not about how you think, because how you feel is at a cellular level. So just stop, turn the brain off, and just feel. Like, how do you feel? And I was like, this is very strange. But I had to really think, how's my body feeling? How am I feeling in my body?
Yes.
Not how am I thinking and feeling. So a lot of people go, how are you? Yeah, I think I'm okay. But that's not really what we're asking, is it? It's how are you? And it's like, I'm tired, or I don't feel so good, or I feel really happy. But when we say I feel, you need to feel yourself at a cellular level.
Yes.
And this is where we've got it wrong as well.
What, in terms of
when we're having these communications about how we're feeling, a lot of times you do hear people go, I think I feel. And it's like, oh, you're using your head. You're not really in tune with your body.
Drop into the body.
Right, because this map of consciousness is all about your cellular energy, not about what the brain's saying. And it is possible, sorry to interrupt you for 2 seconds. I was just going to say, it is possible to feel happy and not think happy thoughts, because they're two different things that are going on. So we can have this contrast happening at the same time, and it is really important to separate out the two.
That's a very good point. Those two things can be true at the same time, because our thoughts are separate. And really, when we think about why connection is more than just words, well, a lot of the time in my speaker coaching, I focus on, it's all about the words. It's all about what you say, that cognitive, articulate way. But when we're thinking about connection, there's so much before the words.
Yeah, the words are important, don't get me wrong, as I said, like in the dating profile. But the saying of people will forget what you said, but always remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
This is what people need to focus on. So how you feel is what you will leave people feeling afterwards, by the way you've shown up, whether it's just being in the room and being quiet, by exchanging looks, by the words you've used and the tone that you've said them in, because the tone that you've said them in is connected to how you're feeling. So even though you might not be saying anything bad to somebody, you will leave them feeling bad because the energy has come across. This is very synonymous with the works of Massimo Emoto, Messages in Water. You know his works? Oh, so we are predominantly made up of water. So it's very complicated and scientific, and I think we've run out of time to go into it in full depth. But needless to say that the way that we put across our communication, it is felt by people. And this is a real thing. It's very scientific. And he's written a whole book about it called Messages in Water.
Well, I'm going to have to check that out.
So talking about checking, this is why we need to check ourselves.
Yes.
So what is my energetic state? before I go and put myself in the same space as somebody else. And it doesn't mean physically, it could just be picking up the phone, because however you're feeling, masking it will not change your energetic vibration, which will come across in the words you're using, your choice of words, and the tone that you're communicating in. And it can either act as a wand or a sword, and that will then impact somebody else's day. And you do not want someone to think back on, I was feeling really good this morning, and then I spoke to Jane and my day just went downhill afterwards.
Well, there we go. And I think that's really important, particularly circling back to the beginning where, for anybody who's out there who is single and who is using the dating apps, check in with yourself before even entering onto that app. Because if you're not in the right energetic place to have a conversation, to start a conversation, don't do it. Just don't do it. Save your energy until you're in a better place, right?
Exactly, because then you can't be upset that someone hasn't responded to you in the way that you wanted them to because you didn't show up in the right way to begin with. It will only then compound any negative thinking that you've got around dating.
There we go. Well, I have loved this conversation, and with all of my guests that come on to the podcast, we finish with one question, which is, what words have changed your life?
So a saying that I have shared many, many times is to expect the unexpected and you'll never be disappointed. When we put expectation on others, it can create a whole raft of problems and lots of disappointment and doesn't leave you open to possibility.
So to expect the unexpected
will leave you not feeling disappointed as a result. When we have expectations, that's when we can end up feeling let down or telling other people that they've let us down. But it's our expectations that are the problem.
So true. I saw Gary Vee saying something similar, not the same thing, a while ago, and I was like, this is so true. Often the breakdown in communication, in problems, it falls from a sort of mismatch in expectations. So if we don't have expectations, then we can have standards and we can have boundaries, but having expectations leads to problems.
And this is where choosing your words is really important and understanding the words that you use.
Wow. Woohoo! I'm loving that one. Thank you so much, Suzie. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. I've really, really loved it. Thank you.
Get in touch with Suzie. All the information is in the show notes, and I look forward to speaking to you next time.
Thank you.